I really like open world games, and some of the games at the top of this list certainly hail from that genre, but for the most part I'm a fan of rural settings over urban. I prefer exploring vast verdant landscapes as opposed to bustling metropolises. That said, when an urban open world game catches my attention, it has to be really good to do so. Sleeping Dogs is probably my favourite of these types of games. You play an undercover cop in Hong Kong who has connections to the Triads, and you are infiltrating their ranks to destroy them from the inside. One of the things that makes this game different is that it's not set in a western city. Instead, this version of Hong Kong is markedly different from other urban spaces, being filled with far more colour and vibrancy than you usually see. The real star though is the combat, which adapts the Arkham style whilst also adding crazy environmental kills that never fail to either shock me or make me cackle at their silliness. My favourite was smacking people around with giant fish. Combine all this with a surprisingly well-told crime drama with characters that you care about, and you have yourself one of the finest open world experiences of the last generation. WarioWare is ridiculous. Each iteration offers something wholly unique while also trying to stay true to the patented absurdity of the series. With that said, it's hard for me to single out any individual game as my favourite. I easily spent the most time with Touched on the DS, which was a launch game and one that I played endlessly, going for high scores in individual micro games and playing the multiplayer table tennis mode with as many people as I could. I probably had the most laughs with the GameCube iteration, playing the wacky multiplayer modes with friends. Smooth Moves was the game where I most appreciated the references, especially the Wind Waker microgame where you have to hold the Deku Leaf over your head and float to safety. And I think the series was at its most weird and creative with Twisted, a late era GBA release that never actually came out in the UK, but I was able to get my hands on it when I went on holiday to America. There really is nothing quite like WarioWare, and yet its game design is so strong that you can legitimately have never seen a microgame before and be able to discern what to do within only a couple of seconds. The fact that you can build a game on that premise is impressive, and WarioWare pulled it off with aplomb. What a stupid idea. What a completely insane idea. A turn-based strategy game starring Super Mario and the Rabbids from Ubisoft? You gotta be having a laugh. That was certainly my first reaction when I heard about this collaboration project off the record. But from the moment I heard about it, I was intrigued. I am, of course, a huge fan of turn-based strategy games, and I don't really share the same revilement for the Rabbids that a lot of other people seem to. I was hopeful, and thankfully that hope paid off, because damn, this is a really good game. I think some of the ideas are just tremendous and make you really have to not only plan ahead, but also synergize with your three-man team to create the most optimal turns. The Overwatch ability that both Mario and Luigi have can combine in amazing ways to create back-to-back hits that destroy high-health enemies. The fact that in one turn you can run through an enemy, deal damage with a slide, run back to your teammate for a jump, land back on the same enemy's head, and then smack them in the face with a blast from your gun is frankly awesome. I even like the little puzzles in the overworld, as well as the humour that is not only present in cutscenes, but sprinkled all over the environment with funny little sight gags here and there. Throw in enemies that challenge your strategies, fantastic bosses that are full of life, and Mario references, and a bombastic soundtrack from Grant Kirkhope, and this really is one of the best surprises in years. Also, Rabid Peach. Rabid Peach. Perhaps the most important thing I look for in video games is how good it feels to play. Game feel is a pretty amorphous concept, but it comes out of a synergy between animation, sound design, and responsiveness that creates that sensation where you say, this just feels good to play. The Ollie Ollie games are on this list pretty much solely for those reasons. If I'm honest, I'm not a fan of the unlock system in these games, as they force you to complete specific achievement-like tasks to unlock more levels. And yet, they claim their spot on this top 100 because learning how to play Ollie Ollie and then mastering the movement is among the best feelings I've had playing games. This 2D skateboarding/platforming series feels weird to control at first, as you need to use a combination of the analog stick and buttons to grind and land your tricks, but an optimal run in Ollie Ollie will finish in one long combo without you even touching the ground at all, just constantly jumping from grind spot to grind spot, tricking as you go and making sure to collect little doodads along the way. Once I got into the flow, there was no going back. I remember playing it while talking to Bally on Skype and raving about how damn good it was. It's also one of the only games where I've gotten into a daily challenge and came back to it for at least a couple of weeks just to check in and see if I could get number 1. Rayman Legends is the perfect blueprint for what Mario needs to do in the modern era. Get rid of lives, have a gorgeous, distinct 2D art style, and step away from traditional platformer level design to create memorable moments. At a time when the Wii U was flailing, Rayman Legends picked up the slack. Sure, it was delayed a bunch because the system was doing so poorly, but when it finally came out, the wait was worth it. There is such a craft to the environment thanks to the UbiArt engine, which makes it look like a moving painting. The checkpointing is so well thought out, making sure that you never repeat sections too many times. It goes from exploration, to puzzle solving, to stealth, to nail-biting platforming so frequently that you're never bored with one style. Hell, even the weird Wii U gamepad levels offered a unique co-op idea that really was only possible on that platform. I'll always remember this game for its amazing music levels that synced covers of famous songs to Rayman's jumps and punches. They also included a ton of levels from the previous game, so those who hadn't played it got even more from this release. It's a real shame that Ubisoft are games as a service mad these days, as it kills any hope for a third game in this modern Rayman series. But hey, a man can dream. I didn't really grow up playing platformers, and the few I did play, I was pretty bad at. I never quite connected with games like the Mario 2 remake on GBA. You would do these long sections and then die and have to spend so long getting back to where you were, not to mention the limited lives you had available. It meant that I played them for a little while, then put them down when I got frustrated with a section. Then came the modern era of platformers, with games like Super Meat Boy, which focused more on bite-sized challenges that were over in less than a minute and got rid of the archaic live system. Needless to say, this was a style I could get on board with. The first game I played of this ilk was a little-known independent effort called VVV. Terry Kavanagh, the sole developer, created this tremendous one-button game that revolved around a simple concept of switching gravity. You die incredibly fast, and you respawn incredibly fast. Each room maybe takes 4 or 5 seconds to finish, and builds and challenge so expertly. The map is also pretty open, and though it looks like a Metroidvania, it most certainly isn't. However, you can tackle the areas in any order you feel like, and there are a bunch of secrets hidden around the map. My favourite, and still one of the most rigorous platforming sections in any game, is a challenge dubbed Veni Vidi Vici, a name which echoes Julius Caesar's famous words, and one which will require all your platforming might to overcome. Beating it will certainly make you feel like a conquering hero. And I haven't even mentioned the astonishingly good soundtrack, which likely ranks in my top 10 OSTs of all time. Maybe I'll make that list one day. I hate dogs. There, I said it. In fact, I kind of hate all pets, or animals, or anything that stays in a house that isn't a human. It's just the way I am. However, digital pets are another matter. You don't have to deal with the bullshit and you get all the good parts. Nintendogs was, of course, a phenomenon when it released, being one of Nintendo's coveted touch generation games, alongside Brain Training. This game, as well as the DS Lite update, ushered in the first wave of Blue Ocean consumers that defined Nintendo through the DS and Wii generation. I love Nintendogs. It utilized the DS perfectly, with the touch controls being used to pet, clean, and interact, and the microphone being leveraged for calling your dog and teaching it tricks. It wasn't perfect, but it worked, and being able to pull off full marks in the trick contest using only your voice was one of the unique joys of Nintendogs. Going on walks was always the thing I look forward to though, as you had the chance to get presents along the way, including the miniature Mario Karts that you could drive around the room. Bark mode was the precursor to Street Pass, and I even got a few people out on the street with it, which was very novel back then. Nintendogs just had a great loop of getting collectibles, training for contests, and taking care of your pet that made the DS features sing, and is still one of the best uses of the hardware. I've said many times that a desire of mine is to play through and finish every mainline Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest game. A daunting task perhaps, but one that I intend to stick to no matter how long it takes me. That said, it shouldn't be too hard considering how long it takes main entries to come out these days, and Dragon Quest XI is no exception. The MMO-only Dragon Quest X never released in the West, so we had been waiting for 8 years after the release of Dragon Quest IX for the next mainline entry. And boy was it worth the wait. Dragon Quest XI is a brilliant game, full of charm and colour, and is the first time we've experienced Dragon Quest in HD. It's the little improvements like allowing your character to jump that just makes the world feel that much more tangible and leads to different exploration possibilities. It's the modernizations like being able to zoom anywhere from anywhere, unlike the older games where you would bang your head on a roof if you were indoors. Or even more important, the ability to freely switch characters in battle, meaning that you have a much better chance against some of the tougher bosses. This is also the best cast of characters in a Dragon Quest game I've played, and each of them gets their time in the spotlight. The crafting minigame is fun, the enemy designs are just ridiculous in the best way, and the world is just drop-dead gorgeous. If the hero in Smash Bros. Has your interest piqued, there really isn't a better Dragon Quest game to start with than this one. There isn't much you can say about Super Metroid that hasn't already been said. It is the grandfather of my favourite video game genre. Every game I've enjoyed that you could call a Metroidvania shares some sort of influence or lineage from this game. And it really is a masterpiece in world building and atmosphere, as well as non-linear game design. I first played it on Wii Virtual Console before finally finishing it on Wii U, and I've started it multiple times since, whether it be through emulation or the Super Nintendo Mini. The progression of power-ups, the variety of areas, and the ingenious ways they all link back and loop on each other really makes you step back and realize how smartly designed this space is. There are minor things that hold Super Metroid back from being higher on this list, and chief among them for me is control. Coming from Metroid Fusion, the feel of Super Metroid isn't quite the same, and it feels slightly sluggish and unresponsive by comparison. I also don't like the grapple hook, but I think that's a preference thing. Those complaints aside though, if they remade Super Metroid with modern tight controls, but kept and improved on the beautiful sprite work, I think you may have the perfect video game. Two titans back to back, and we haven't even hit the number 80 spot on this list yet. Yes, Ocarina of Time is a brilliant video game that defined the modern action-adventure genre. Yes, it built on the template of Link to the Past, and in many ways exceeded it. And yes, it has one of the most evocative soundtracks of all time, blending music and gameplay seamlessly. But to me, Ocarina of Time will always be magic. I never played Ocarina of Time as a kid, but one of my friends had the game, and the first time I saw it was truly spellbinding. I was blown away. The characters, the atmosphere, the terror in some cases. I remember Link leaving the village and feeling so sad for Saria, thinking they would never see each other again. I remember seeing Hyrule Field for the first time, and being overwhelmed at its scope, and then being scared to death when night fell and skeletons came out of the ground to attack you. I kid you not, me and my friend hid in the moat by Hyrule Castle until daytime, where the skeletons couldn't get you because it was so terrifying. Then figuring out how to get past the guards and see Zelda, a task that took us way longer than it should have. It was unlike anything I had seen before. I've since owned it on Wii and Wii U Virtual Console, and on 3DS for the remake where I finally beat it myself. But Ocarina of Time will always be a game I have more fondness for watching than for playing. In the early 2000s, I remember downloading speedruns of it, and then when Let's Plays happened on YouTube, I watched some of my favourite creators play through it themselves. Ocarina of Time may be the game I've played the least that I also know the most about, but it's still no less special to me.